Today I'm going to show you how to make rainbow cookies, which also can be called 7-layer cookies, tricolored cookies, Venetian cookies, or sometimes even Napoleon cookies. So let me show you what you're going to need for this recipe. This recipe calls for 3 9 by 13 sheet pans, which is also commonly called a quarter sheet pan, a measuring scale, 3 sheets of parchment paper. I have 3 bowls that weigh the same size, pan spray. I also have a bag of chocolate chips there, 12 ounces. I'm using my mixer with the paddle attachment. I have half a pound of unsalted butter at room temperature, cut into cubes. I also have 8 ounces of almond paste that I cut into cubes. I have 4 large eggs at room temperature, 1 cup of sugar. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of almond extract, half a cup of seedless raspberry preserves or jam, and about 15 to 20 drops each of red and green food coloring. Alright, so now I'm going to start the mixing process. I'm actually going to use the creaming method to start this cookie mixture. I'm going to take my sugar, my almond paste, and 1 cup of butter. Almond paste is made from ground almonds or almond meal and sugar in equal quantities with small amounts of cooking oil, beaten eggs, heavy cream, or corn syrup as a binder to make it like nice and pasty. So here I am mixing the sugar, almond paste, and butter until it starts to really come together well. You don't see any spots of almond paste or butter throughout it. It's starting to get a little bit fluffy. Make sure that you stop the machine periodically to wipe down the sides and the blade to make sure that all of the ingredients are being combined well. You're going to let this continue to mix for about 4 to 5 minutes in total. And then you're going to start adding your eggs one at a time until they're all incorporated. Remember, we add the eggs one at a time so that they are fully incorporated. What they're doing is they're emulsifying, they're blending completely into this mixture. And if we add them too fast, it may make the batter curdle a little bit. Also, the temperature of the eggs should be room temperature. That will help with your emulsification. So after I've added all 4 eggs, I'm going to add my extract, my almond extract. If you don't have almond extract, you could add a little bit of vanilla extract, but the almond flavoring in the extract really helps the almond flavor in the cookie. I'm going to shut my machine off. I'm going to wipe the sides of the bowl. I'm going to wipe off the paddle, and I'm going to remove the bowl from the mixing stand. I'm going to mix in the flour and the salt. I just mixed the salt into the flour. I'm going to mix that in by hand. I don't want to over mix this batter because then my cookies will be really tough. So I'm going to combine this in by hand so I don't over mix them and develop too much gluten because of the flour, and that would cause toughness. So you can see that I've stirred in all of the flour, and now I'm going to scale out my batter into 3 different bowls because we're going to do 3 different layers in 3 different pans. So what I'm doing is I'm putting a bowl on top of my portion scale, and I'm adding all of this batter into the bowl. As you can see, I put my measurements on my scale into grams because I feel like that they are much easier to divide by 3. So I got 1153. I divided by 3 bowls, and I put 384 grams in each of my bowls. Your measurement may be a little bit different, so please make sure you accurately measure. If you do not have a scale, what you could do is you could measure using cups. So you could put 1 cup in each bowl at a time, then put a 2nd cup in each bowl at a time, then a 1/4 cup in each bowl at a time until you have an even measurement. I'm going to put my drops of food coloring into my bowls. So 1 bowl is going to have red, 1 bowl is going to have green, and 1 bowl I'm not going to add any dye to. You can use any colors that you like, but these are just the traditional colors of this cookie, but I have seen them in all different colors. I'm going to mix this batter until the color is consistent all the way through in all 3 bowls. Now I'm going to prepare my pans. I'm going to spray a little bit of cooking spray to secure my parchment paper onto the pan, and then I'm going to spray it a little bit more. Just one of the edges wasn't staying well enough. I'm going to spray the rest of the pan just so I can make sure that these delicate cookie layers release easily from the pan and from the parchment paper. So this could be a little bit tricky because you want to make sure that each layer is even throughout the whole pan. Now I have 3 pans that are basically brand new, so they're not warped or they're very level throughout the whole thing. That is something that is actually very important, because if the pans are not level, they're uneven in any way, the consistency or the look of the cookie may be a little bit off. But you can use whatever you have at home, or even reuse 1 pan 3 times to get the 3 layers cooked, just making sure that you cool the pan in between each layer. So now I'm just taking my offset spatula and I am spreading this cookie layer to all corners and edges of the pan. Okay, this may take a little bit of time and patience because you want to make sure it's even all the way throughout. But once you're done with the first pan, you can go on to the second and the third pan. As you can see, I have all 3 layers done. I'm just cleaning the edges a little bit so I don't have any burnt pieces or smells in the oven. And now I'm going to put them in a preheated 350-degree oven. I'm going to bake them for about 10 to 12 minutes. The sides will be slightly brown and a toothpick should be inserted into the cookie and come out clean, right? So these are not very thick cookies, so you can just slide it in almost horizontally. So now I'm going to prepare my layers. I took a piece of parchment paper, but you can use wax paper if you have, and put the first layer down. This layer has been cooling for about 10 minutes. I'm going to add about 1/4 cup, or maybe a little bit more if you want to, of my preserves. You can use raspberry throughout the whole cookie, or you can do 1 layer that has raspberry and 1 layer that has apricot. Everybody has their own little spin on it. So I'm going to go all the way to the edges with the raspberry jam, and then I'm going to put my next layer on. My next layer is the white layer, the layer that doesn't have any food coloring on it. I'm going to add my other half of my jam, about 1/4 cup, maybe a little bit more. Again, you could do raspberry throughout the whole recipe, or you can do apricot on this layer. So I'm going to put my last layer on top and I'm going to press it down. Then I'm going to wrap it. I put some plastic wrap underneath my pan that my cookie cake is on, wrapping it really well. Any open spots could cause this cookie cake to dry out, and I want to avoid that. So I'm wrapping it really, really well. Okay, and from there, what I'm going to do is I am going to put another pan on top, and I'm going to place it in my refrigerator for 4 to 8 hours or overnight. If you could put more weight on it, that is better. The next day, what I'm going to do is I have to make my chocolate glaze. So I'm going to take a pot of water and I'm going to bring it up to a simmer. I'm going to actually turn the water off, okay, because we don't need it boiling at this point. We just need the heat or the or the steam, heat up the bowl and to melt the chocolate that we're going to put in there. If we leave the flame on and the water boiling, it could actually burn the chocolate. So you have to be careful of that. So you have to turn the water off. And I kind of just let it sit there for a few minutes before I'm even going to knead it, so it could start to melt without any effort on my part. Now I'm going to start mixing the chocolate a little bit, just so that the chocolate that's on top can come in contact with the bottom of the bowl. At this point, when it's really almost melted, I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons of oil. I added plain vegetable oil. You can add any kind of oil that does not have like a strong flavor to it. I'm going to stir that in until it's well incorporated, and then I'm just going to let the chocolate stay there until I'm ready, because I'm just about ready to prepare my rainbow cookies. Now it's time to take my rainbow cookie cake out of the refrigerator. I'm going to take the plastic wrap off, and I'm actually going to put this directly on the counter, but with a piece of parchment paper underneath it so I can transfer it easily. I'm going to trim the edges. Don't throw those edges away. They are delicious in some ice cream or just as a snack. They just don't look so pretty. I'm going to take about half of the chocolate. I'm going to spread it evenly across the top of these cookies. We start with the red side up because the green side actually goes on the top. So we start with the bottom first. You're just going to spread this out evenly. I hadn't decided until after that I was going to coat the sides. So during this side, I did not coat the edges, but you could if you wanted to. Okay. I'm going to put this in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to coat the remaining chocolate on the other side. I'm going to take a piece of parchment paper. I'm going to flip this cake over, and I'm going to do the same thing to this side that I did to the other side. I'm going to coat it liberally with chocolate. Now remember that this cake is cold, so that the chocolate will harden really quickly. So try to move as quickly as possible. I did use all of the chocolate to coat all of the sides. Just made sure that it was a nice even coating throughout the whole cookie. Now, if you want to stop at this point and you want to make this somebody's birthday cake, this is a delicious treat. The next step I did was I put some sprinkles on top. I only put sprinkles on part of it because not everybody likes sprinkles in my house. But typically you would put chocolate sprinkles. I only had rainbow sprinkles. So I covered about 1/3 of this cake with the sprinkles before I put it back in the refrigerator. You have to make sure that the chocolate is still a little tacky, because if it's not, the sprinkles will fall right off while you're cutting it. I'm going to put it back in the refrigerator for about a half an hour, and then I'm going to take it out to cut them. So some people say use a serrated knife. I like to use a chef knife, or I'm using a Santoku, but something that I can get right through, that I could put a little bit of force on, and I don't feel like I can do that with a serrated knife. I have a cup of hot water, and what I am doing is I am cutting this into cookies that are about 1 inch thick and probably about 2.5 inches wide. You can cut them smaller if you want to. That is up to you. Just make sure that every time you put the knife into the cookie cake, you take it out, you put it in hot water, and you wipe the blade so that you are able to get a nice clean cut every time. The way I cut these cookies, I got about 48 cookies, but you can get more if you cut them a little bit smaller, or you can get less if you cut them a little bit larger. Really, the decision is yours. To store these, you should put them in an airtight container, and they stay well on the counter, but if it is very hot out, you can leave them in the refrigerator. just take a look at these cookies, how beautiful those 3 layers look. Again, they may not be perfectly even, but I think I did a pretty good job on my first attempt. Hope you enjoyed this recipe. Let us know if you try it out and if you have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell for notifications for when we add new videos. Thanks for watching.